Great. Hello. Just waiting here for everyone to log in. Just give it a couple more seconds here. Great, perfect. Well, hello and welcome everyone to our professor-led webinar today, Why Marketing Matters to Everyone in Business. For those of you that I haven't met or haven't had a chance to chat with yet, my name is Misha and I am one of the recruitment and admission managers for the Oxford MBA. So the idea of the webinar today is to give our incoming students an opportunity to meet and ask questions to some of your future professors. We're very lucky today to be joined by Professor Andrew Stephen, Associate Dean of Research and L'Oreal Professor of Marketing, Alex Connick, Fellow in Management Practice, and Rhonda Hattie, Associate Professor of Marketing. So just to give you some background before we kick off the session, I'll quickly give you a bio of Andrew so you understand sort of the company that we're with this afternoon. So Professor Andrew Stephen is a leading academic voice on the technology-centric future of marketing, media, and advertising industries. He is currently the Associate Dean of Research and L'Oreal Professor of Marketing at the Saïd Business School. He is also the founding director of Oxford Future of Marketing Initiative, which is a collaborative between academic researchers and some of the world's leading brands, agencies, and technology companies aimed at shaping the future of marketing discipline through rigorous research and practice evidence-based thought leadership. His research interests lie at the intersections of marketing, consumer psychology, and technology, and he was recently recognized as one of the top academic researchers in marketing in the world and #1 in the UK by the American Marketing Association. So thank you for joining us today, and over to you, Andrew.
Okay, thanks, Misha, and welcome to all of you on the webinar. So I'll get to introducing my colleagues at the moment, in a minute rather, and I see Rhonda is here. Alex was here, but then just disappeared. So I don't know what's going on. But just to give you a sense of what we're going to talk about for the next 45, 50 minutes is two things really. Talk about marketing and sort of our perspective as 3 out of the 7 members of the marketing faculty at Oxford Saïd in terms of why this is an important topic. And it might be the case that you selected to come to this webinar today sort of as you're gearing up to start your MBA after the summer and getting really excited about that because you're a marketing person, but also maybe because you're curious about marketing and you haven't come from that background, but you're intrigued. So we'll sort of talk at a high level about why we think this matters to everyone, not just to people who work in marketing related roles, and then also we'll tell you a little bit about how we've built the marketing curriculum in the MBA at Oxford Saïd, both in terms of the core and the electives, and also what we call co-curricular, but a whole bunch of other activities that are not part of the formal program, but if you're interested in, you can tap into. So the goal really is to give you a bit of a sense of our mindset, I suppose, what we think about, what you could expect from the marketing part of the program when you're here. And also, of course, give you an opportunity to ask us any questions that you would like to ask, and we'll do our very best to answer them. On that note, with questions, please pop them into the Q&A, and I'll keep an eye on that as we go, but we'll leave some time at the end for Q&A. So with that, I'm going to just turn over to Rhonda to quickly introduce herself. And Alex just sent me a text. His broadband dropped, so he'll be back on soon. But Rhonda, as you heard from Misha, is an Associate Professor of Marketing at Oxford Saïd, and is one of our many fantastic research and teaching colleagues in the group. So Rhonda, if you want to just give a little bit of bio to yourself, and then we'll keep on going. I don't think we can hear you, Rhonda.
Classic.
There we go.
So yes, as Andrew mentioned, I'm Rhonda. I've been here at SBS a little over 6 years now. I'm looking really forward to meeting most of you this fall. And most of my interests in research are in two areas, the areas of sensory marketing and consumer interactions with technology, particularly new technologies. And a lot of my research looks at the interaction between those two things. In terms of teaching, I teach on the MBA core along with this time 6 of my colleagues, which I'm really excited about. I also teach on 2 different electives, and I think we'll talk a little bit about electives later on. One, strategic consumer insights, and then the New York trip, digital transformation of marketing, media, and advertising, which is another fun one. And so maybe I'll end it there just to keep things brief.
Yeah, and as Alex is trying to get his broadband working again, I'll intro him. So Alex Connick is a fellow in management practice in the marketing group with us. So what that means is that they're, I think I just heard someone, but anyway, Alex is a practitioner who's come into academia, and so sort of sits on both sides of, I guess, the practice academia divide, which for us, by the way, isn't really a divide, and we'll get to that soon in terms of why that's not the case. But so Alex has a background in the entertainment industry, particularly in film and TV and advertising production, and does a lot of work sort of in terms of sort of new media platforms and how they're used from a business and a marketing standpoint, which is actually a common interest across a lot of us in the group. As Rhonda mentioned, sort of consumer and technology intersection. I do a lot of work around social media and digital marketing and marketing leadership work, which is largely now about digital transformation and change management within marketing organizations. And so we all sort of have a very future-oriented or forward-looking perspective on the role of marketing in organizations, which is what we sort of wanted to start with today. So, we pitched this webinar as sort of a discussion about why on earth is this important? And like I said in the intro, you might be sort of sold already, so we're preaching to the choir, but I thought we'd give you some of our perspectives, just to give a little taste of the way we think about marketing, because it's actually changed quite a lot, even in the last ever since the lockdown even and the pandemic. The way we might think about marketing has shifted somewhat, but certainly over the last 5-10 years, there's been massive changes in marketing. Some of them are obvious in terms of there are different media channels that advertisers might use to reach you. The rise of social media, for example, and those sorts of things. But there's also behind the scenes or sort of more consumer mindset type aspects that have also become different and changed. Some of the work that Rhonda looks at with respect to how people use technology, for instance, is part of how we think about marketing, because it's about consumer behavior. And the marketing sort of function, if you will, in large and small and everything in between organizations is evolving a lot. So for example, when I go and talk to CMOs of large organizations, they almost seem to be perennially saying, yeah, I'm in the midst of reorganizing our 600 marketing people. We need to get ready for the future. What skills do we need? What new this, what new that? Which sounds interesting. To some, it might be a bit exhausting and maybe change for the sake of change instead of it being strategically valuable. But that's kind of lay of the land at the moment. That's what's going on out there. Whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing is actually part of what we talk a lot about in our program. When do you need to make those changes versus when do you not? When do the classic principles of marketing, which some of you might have studied, in previous degrees, when do they still apply versus when are they a bit out of date? And so there's this sort of old versus new and everything kind of blended perspective that we try and bring in, because it's not one of those fields where everything has changed and we ignore the old stuff. It's just that there's a lot of new things and new possibilities that could be opportunities, but they could also be a massive resource sink if not taken on board sort of in a smart way. So we approach it that way, and I see Alex is back. Everything that you would expect to happen on a webinar has happened here. Alex's broadband dropped. Rhonda had her mic on mute. Hopefully that's it for our tech challenges. But Alex, just to catch up, I'll just sort of give you a bit of a sense of what our mindset is and our approach to marketing. And I already introduced you, but I'll let you introduce yourself in more detail in a minute. But the other aspect that we think about here, and this is sort of how we start actually our core marketing course, is to sort of think about what marketing's fundamental role is in an organization, and we believe it's about growth. I'm going to share a couple of quotes from marketing leaders in industry, but this one from Keith Weed. He's on the board of WPP, so the world's largest marketing services organization, conglomerate of advertising agencies and media agencies and insights firms and so on. But also, recently retired as the chief marketing officer of Unilever. So Keith basically says, as marketers, our job is to show where growth is coming from. Our job is to look out into the future as marketers and think about what trends are there in the marketplace that might result in us thinking about new products or new services to offer to consumers that they're going to value. What changes might be happening, say, in the media landscape, which give us new opportunities for reaching and engaging with our potential and current customers, and so on and so forth. So there's this sort of future sensing, looking out ahead, very strategic role of marketing, and in the truest sense of what marketing should be about, because it's about looking at demand. It's about looking at customers and consumers and figuring out how the firm can create value for that constituency, and basically get them to buy our products and services. So it's not about making people buy stuff that they don't want. It's about understanding what the market wants, what the demand side is all about, and then figure out how to bring the organization to that demand. And therefore, we're about growing the organization, and not growth for the sake of growth, but sustainable and responsible growth, but very market-driven, consumer, customer-driven, and focused. So that's one perspective. Another, I think, related perspective, and a bit more current, related to the COVID-19 situation, is a quote from Lubomira Rocher. Lubomira is the Chief Digital Officer of L'Oreal. Interestingly, with L'Oreal, they don't have a global Chief Marketing Officer. They have a Chief Digital Officer who actually last year won an industry award for Marketer of the Year from one of the top industry bodies. So this is an organization which is in certainly a products business across all of the product categories in beauty that they serve and the different segments. But really their marketing strategy is, from the center at least, globally being driven by a digital person, and then they have regional chief marketing officers in all the different countries. But speaking, and this is a quote from an article in the FT a few weeks ago, growth, and it's an example of how growth can come from many different sources, but it's coming from the market, not necessarily from internally in the firm. The crisis has profoundly accelerated digital transformation of the beauty sector. In e-commerce, we achieved in 8 weeks what it would have otherwise taken us 3 years to do. So that's a story about transformation. How do you orchestrate a massive organization around the world to shift from selling products on shelves, which can no longer be accessed in countries where retail was closed, which is pretty much everywhere at the height of this, to how do we sell on e-commerce, which had maybe been single digits percentage-wise, and then they got it to 20% e-commerce by about a month ago. So how do you do that, right? That's fundamentally a marketing problem, because it's about distribution. How do we get our products to the customer in the way that they want them? And what is it that they want under these different conditions? So there's a consumer insights piece, there's a distribution piece, and there's clearly a digital aspect wrapped around all of that. So it's about change. It's about transitioning based on what the market is doing at the time. So very strategically and fundamentally, these are just 2 examples of sort of very broadly how we think about marketing. So I want to now go to Rhonda and Alex, because I know they've got their own sort of personal views and opinions on this as well to share with you. So Rhonda, perhaps we want to start with you in terms of sort of the question of why marketing matters to everyone.
Almost did it again. So yeah, no, I mean, I think, Andrew, you hit the nail on the head. And what's really great about the way we teach the core marketing course at Oxford, and Andrew will talk more about it in a bit, is that you're going to hear from experts in different areas of marketing, because, as you know, marketing is very broad. And so I'm actually pretty psyched about the way we're teaching it this year. I think students are pretty lucky that they're getting to hear multiple different voices as opposed to maybe just having one or two lecturers for the whole term on this broad topic. And so, as I alluded to earlier, and as Andrew mentioned, I look at things from more of a consumer behavior lens, and to me, marketing is very much the voice of the consumer in the firm. And so, yes, it's not about tricking people or manipulating people into buying things. It's about really delivering value to your consumers. And yes, part of that means, communicating that value, because even if you have the absolute best product in the world, it's pretty useless if nobody knows about it, if consumers don't see the value of that product, if it's not priced accurately, if it's not in the right channels where people can access it, et cetera, et cetera. And so for me, the consumer is really the heart of everything. And obviously from a business point of view, that's where your revenue comes from. Importantly though, and Andrew touched upon this a little bit, we're not only talking about kind of tangible products and services for for-profit firms, but most of the same concepts apply if you're talking about marketing causes or for nonprofits, which many of our students are very interested in at Said.
All right, Rhonda, thank you. Alex, your perspective.
Well, that was a nice segue, because I'm actually on the board of UNICEF, so I see at firsthand the degree, the dimensions to which marketing is important in nonprofits. It's absolutely vital. I think that's the sort of central point, really, that marketing is so pervasive in our lives and in businesses that it would be sort of bordering on the absurd to say that marketing, it doesn't matter to me. Because if you're working for Goldman Sachs and selling great big multi-billion-dollar deals, you're still marketing because you've got to sell your services. And if you're working for a sports club, you're still marketing. So I think that the first notion that we always manage to persuade people of is that marketing does matter to them. And so even if some people arrive in the class saying, I'm supernumerate and I just want to be a finance person, actually within 10 minutes, they realize that as Keith Weed from Unilever also said, the finance people's job is to count the money, but the marketing person is to bring the money in the first place, and that's pretty important. So I think it's great that we've got 80 odd people participating in this session, and that itself is indicative of how appealing the subject can actually be and how sort of multifaceted it can be. I noticed that we've opened up both the chat and the Q&A. So I think anyone's welcome to put, where would we prefer comments, Andrew?
Pop it in the Q&A.
Okay, yeah, great. So I thought what I would do is I would just actually play you a video, and this video is sort of a counterintuitive video, really, which is designed to show you that marketing isn't like it is in the textbooks. When somebody's got some toothpaste factory and they need to sort of optimize sales of the toothpaste and so forth, that's all very relevant, but marketing is much more sort of transcendental than that. So if I may, I'm just going to share my screen, Andrew, very quickly.
Go ahead.
Oh no, it's someone that's been disabled. I need to be made a host again, sorry. Whilst we're doing that, I will just chat on a little bit. So one of the things that I teach actually is the entertainment elective. Am I all set now, Andrew?
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm going to play this. And so I'm always interested in sort of marketing in video and marketing in movies and streaming and so forth like that, and games as well. So this is quite a nice little example here. I'm just going to play it to you and to give you a sense of how far marketing reaches now.
Let's now talk Fortnite, shall we? It's the newest video game craze, spreading fast among kids, college kids, even celebrities.
Kids are nuts for this Fortnite.
Fortnite has taken over the gaming world, becoming the most streamed game on Twitch ever. But brands are left out of the action, either tweeting from the sidelines or paying big bucks for in-game sponsorships. So when Fortnite announced a new event called Food Fight between Team Pizza and Team Burger, Wendy's saw an organic way-in. We found out Team Burger stored their beef in freezers. And Wendy's doesn't do frozen beef. So we got on Twitch, chose a character with red hair and pigtails, dropped into the game, and instead of killing other players, we started destroying burger freezers. Again and again and again. For 9 hours straight. We also declared our mission on Twitter, sending hundreds of thousands of gamers to Twitch to watch us play. And soon other players stopped killing each other and started killing burger freezers with us.
Hey, Wendy's, dude, let's go!
Top Twitch streamers took notice.
I saw a Wendy's stream over here, dude.
Oh, you smacking the burgers, freezers?
This shit's lit. This kind of stuff keeps the game fresh.
So you go. So that's quite interesting, isn't it, in a way? Because what it goes to the heart of is that marketing has to keep pace with life and with society. And actually, if you think back to Andrew was mentioning just when I rejoined after my broadband fallout, the traditional marketing acronyms and so forth. One of which is the 4 Ps, the famous 4 Ps: product, price, place, and promotion. And actually, 3 of those Ps were in that video, even though it was about Twitch and streaming games and so forth, and bashing up freezers and so forth. So a lot of what we're doing is trying to translate the sort of traditional precepts of marketing into the kind of 21st century, and in fact into the 2020s, where I think it's also already been said, actually in a period of weeks, like at L'Oreal, people have moved forward 10 years, and so business has become that much more dynamic and online this year than ever before. And one of the things we're redoing is revisiting our curriculum simply in order to reflect the changed world in the 9 months since we last taught this course. So it's a really fun, really interesting course, super interactive, and actually I think everyone ends up enjoying it. Back to you, Andrew.
Thanks. And yeah, I'd add what's particularly interesting about now and thinking about marketing, this comes back to Rhonda's particular focus on consumer behavior, is, I always think in terms of consumers' expectations and where they're coming from. And you could think about something like COVID-19 as kind of really turning everyone's expectations, completely, not even on their head. I don't know what the right phrases actually in this case, because there's been such a massive change, right, in terms of all of our lifestyles and considerations and what we think of as uncertain events and so on. So what does that do in the consumer's mind is one question, but then actually, what does that do to your consumer or your customer? And what are they now expecting, right? So expectations really, really matter in terms of driving things like customer satisfaction and loyalty, willingness to pay, sort of classic marketing constructs and KPIs. But where are those expectations coming from becomes a really big question. And it's always been a big question, but it's, I think, increasingly important now. So if you take the example of, the shift for, the sort of, I think, innovative shift with a lot of what we've seen in a lot of restaurants, for example, doing takeaway and cooking at home kits and all this sort of stuff in parts of the world where they just can't be open and having customers. So, that might excite me. But now I'm expecting, maybe every other business I deal with to have some innovative adaptation to their business model as well. But maybe they're not doing that. But maybe there's someone else out there that captures my interest because they do. And so there's sort of cross-industry expectations due to, innovative new business models that are sort of more resilient and whatever else. That we would call expectation spillovers that become really, really important. So there's a consumer insights question there to understand your customer better. It's not just what do they need and want, but where are their expectations coming from and how might they have changed in relation to competitors, companies in other industries, other experiences that are not commercial, the macro environment, all sorts of things. So these are the sorts of questions that you have to ask. And so marketing is a lot about knowing which questions are the right questions to be asking.
Well, on the subject of questions, Andrew, we've actually got a couple of good questions in the chat. Should we try and unmute Vishnu Priya and also Toby Chukwu?
Yeah, let's do it.
We've got really good questions.
Yeah, okay. So...
looking for Vishnu Priya, first of all.
Yep.
Sorry for butchering your name if I did.
Apologies, but for some reason it's not. I can't see an attendee list, so I think we'll just have to read out the question. Sorry.
We have a good question here. Yeah, so it says,
Go for it.
I understand soft skills are the center of marketing. Not sure that's totally agreed, but what are some of the hard skills marketing aspirants can learn before and during pursuing their MBA? Thank you. Andrew.
All right, yeah, let me kick that off because I'm a quant guy. Background is actually in engineering before I came into to academia as a marketer. So, the premise of the question is that there's a lot of soft skills. Yeah, creativity is a massively important part of marketing, thinking innovatively and so on. But so are numbers, so is analytics. When we'll get to the curriculum in formal ways in a minute, but you'll see there's a course called Artificial Intelligence and Analytics for Marketing. Advanced analytics for marketing. So that's an elective that you can take if you're so inclined to learn about, statistics, analytics, and machine learning as it applies to marketing and customer management and retail. In the core marketing, we do customer analysis, which certainly can have a qualitative dimension to it, but a quantitative dimension, say when you're sizing a market. Customer lifetime value analysis is a key aspect also of thinking about how do we measure the value of our customers, which is for the more finance and accounting inclined people, is basically a discounted cash flow calculation adapted to customers. And that helps you work out things like acquisition costs. How much should you pay to get a customer? Well, it's going to be related to their long-term value. And making sure that that long-term value exceeds the acquisition cost up front. So those sorts of principles we bring into marketing, absolutely. And then
I would go further. So I would also say the construction of a marketing plan would be a hard skill. It's certainly a skill that you're going to need in the real world. And if you're not the marketing person itself in the company, you certainly need to know what a good marketing plan should be like and what it should cover. So I wouldn't describe that as a soft skill. I'd describe it as a necessary skill, actually.
Yeah, and Rhonda, what's your thought on that from a consumer insights standpoint, which obviously is a blend of quant and qual?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's fair to say that we all believe whole brain thinking is pretty important in marketing. And it may not be the case that you have one person who is really strong left and right brain, but you ideally would have teams that are bringing both the content side, creative, narrative, but also the analytics sides. And ideally, I think in most organizations, you would support all your decisions with really good, hard numbers. And so even in the consumer insights elective, I would say it's split half and half. We go over different research methodologies, some of which are very quantitative and some are a little bit more qualitative in terms of getting at people's subconscious motivations and things like that. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say soft skills are at the center. I think it's 50-50 in a way.
There's some great questions. Every one of these questions is great.
Yeah, so let's do another. Actually, let me do the curriculum overview super quickly, because I think this might address some of the questions, like about co-curricular and so on, and then we'll come back to everything else, because I think the curriculum might also generate some more questions. So let me just pop up my my PowerPoint one more time, and just super quickly walk you through this, simply to give you a sense of how I think about it, really. So our marketing curriculum, so a little bit of context. So I joined the school just over 5 years ago to head up the marketing faculty. And we did, Rhonda and I were the only ones at the time, and now the group's very much grown, but we did a massive refresh of the marketing curriculum. And we've done that importantly in a few different ways, or combining different perspectives. And so where does it come from? This is not a sort of a classic textbooky driven perspective. Like I said earlier, we're very much interested about the future and where things are, what things are happening now, where they're headed, and what can we take from sort of traditional and conventional frameworks, and as Alex sort of said, translate them into the 2020s and beyond. So we look at industry themes and trends. We obviously draw on our own experience as a teaching team. All of us have all kinds of business experience and entrepreneurial experience in some cases. We all are, deeply engaged with the academic community as well as, marketing professionals in lots of different industries. Alex sits on the board of UNICEF, for example. I sit on a bunch of advisory boards and so on and so forth. So, we've got experience too. There's fundamentals that, like I said, we draw on. There's obviously academic research, which can inform this. And I know there are a few questions about our research, which we'll cover soon. But the long and short of it is we definitely feed the research that's happening in this group into what we teach in the classroom. It's actually personally one of the most important things that we do. I don't know if you caught at the beginning, but I'm also the Dean of Research in the school. So I'm responsible for the entire research inside business school. And, one of the things that's key to our research strategy is what we do in our research, which is a lot of time by most faculty members, is brought into the classroom as quickly as possible, because it's very fresh, it's very relevant, and it's very high quality academic work that translates into practice. So we do that, plus draw from other disciplines. And then we spend a lot of time also bringing insights from marketing leaders and major organizations into our program. So you hear from them too. It's not just us. And actually in the design of the core course that you'll experience, for us, it'll be in sort of late November into December, with a hybrid mode of delivery. There'll be, you know, a combination of material with the 7 of us, and so 3 of us are here now, but the whole group, sort of self-paced learning plus weekly live sessions in person, you know, all going well with health and safety, but in person, groups of 20 students at a time with a faculty member talking about the issues of the week in the structure of the course, but then also 2 leading industry guest speakers a week in a sort of, you know, one-on-one chat with me, fireside chat type of mode a week, to sort of talk about also the issues of the week and what's going on in their organizations and particular industries. And so you'll be hearing from us, you'll be hearing from industry leaders, and you'll be obviously hearing from us in terms of the research that we do as well. So this all guides our curriculum. It's very important that you see it as this multifaceted, multi-sourced entity. We've also got the Oxford Future Marketing Initiative, and there's a bunch of logos you can see there on the screen, but these are our key industry partners that we collaborate with on research and in our programs, and particularly the MBA. So you can see a lot of well-known sort of household name organizations there, where we interact with senior leaders who are very frank and very open and tell us what issues they're facing. We'll do research on some of those things, and others we'll bring into the classroom as well. And this is often where we get a lot of our guests speakers from, and other opportunities, frankly, as well for students. Increasingly, we're seeing internships and those sorts of things happen with our FOMI partners. And then, you know, just to sort of quickly, we also are involved. General Assembly is one of our partners. It's a digital learning company, which is best known really for enterprise level upskilling of marketing and inserts and analyst positions to make them much more equipped for the sort of the current requirements of the labor force, so digital skills and so on and so forth. So I sit on that board, and with a group of marketing leaders, where we come up with what people should be learning, basically. What's a career path? So we you know, what we do is informed in part by this. This is the framework that we use in that context, which sort of lists out the things you need to know about. But again, the point is that this is all very much informed by what's happening now, and frankly, what employers say they need from MBA graduates with respect to marketing knowledge. It's not what is in a textbook, it's what, you know, a CMO of a major organization is saying, or a you know, a VC who, you know, is sort of the marketing expert on a VC team looking at acquisitions of startups. What do they think, you know, marketing experts need to know about? And you know, this is really what we're bringing in. We've got our perspectives, and then we bring those industry perspectives too. Core marketing, you know, these are the themes. I won't kind of belabor the point on this slide so we can get back to the questions, but I want to talk about the electives and let Alex and Rhonda chime in about theirs as well, because there's quite a few questions about this. So the offer for the coming academic year, so well, predominantly all of you, your MBA, will have these 5 electives. And you know, so Rhonda teaches strategic consumer insights, and I'll go to her in a second, as well as does with me the digital transformation of marketing, media, and advertising, which is normally a trip to New York, and I really hope we'll be able to do that again. It's usually in April, so April 2021. There's the AI and analytics and marketing course, which I developed and is now taught by a colleague, Jason Bell, which you know, spoke about briefly before. Alex does the business of arts, culture, and entertainment with another one of our colleagues, Cami Krolik, and another colleague, Felipe Tomaz, and I do digital and social media. So Rhonda, do you want to just talk a little bit about strategic consumer insights, just to give a little flavor for what that course is about?
Sure, yeah, so I talked about it very briefly, but basically I would say the main idea behind the elective, I could say it's divided into 3 parts. First, really getting inside the head of the consumer. So this means going over classic theories associated with consumer attention and perception, understanding their goals, their motivations, you know, why they do what they do, how they make choices and make decisions, the effects of culture, subculture, etc. But importantly, a really big part of the course is going over research methodologies that can be used to uncover those insights. And so a big part of the class is in teams, groups actually conduct research about a real marketing problem, usually for a nonprofit organization, and build recommendations based on the insights that they gather through that research. So number one, understanding the theory. Number two, doing the research to gain those insights. And then a really big component of the course is the third part, which is really developing the intellectual ability to convert those insights into viable marketing strategies. So how do the insights turn into things like pricing strategy or change product design or the way you communicate with the customer, etc. So it's a lot of the underlying theory is psychology, but it's a very, very applied course, importantly. And in the past, it's been a lot of fun.
And Alex, how about Business of Arts, Culture, and Entertainment, which you just did last week?
Yeah, so I'm going to pick up on a question actually that Sarah Alinger has asked, which is, are there any other opportunities to learn about marketing in non-Eurocentric contexts? That's such a good question, Sarah, because that is a big, big topic at the school. And we're very, very keen to not end up as the people who just use Starbucks and sort of Wendy's as every example for everything, you know. So yes, we're working really, really hard on that. And I'll just play you an example of that, actually. So this is a session we did last week. I might just share my screen very briefly if I can, Andrew, just to show you. So we had a session last week where a woman called Frida Isingoma talked about the art market.
2008 to 2011 was the fact that the Chinese were very focused on buying in cultural equity and So
she's starting a business in African art. So we deliberately made sure that in our cases that we picked, we didn't just focus on the usual suspects in terms of the West, if you want to call it that. And we went as far beyond that as we possibly can, and we'll continue to work on that. And frankly, because it just makes life much more interesting. You know, there's only a limited number of times you can talk about Netflix, but you can talk about Indonesia and, you know, Vietnam, you know, much more interestingly, because not everyone knows those references. So it becomes a much more interesting class, actually. So the course I teach, just to quickly show you, is the Business of Arts, Media and Entertainment. And just to whiz you through the guests that we had, just to give you a concept, of what kind of thing Andrew's talking about. We tend to get really good guests. So we had the guy who ran the MTV Europe Music Awards, which was really interesting, lots of celebrity anecdotes, as you can imagine. We had a quiz. We had a big TV producer called Danielle Lux. We had the guy who runs Noma, the famous Danish restaurant, talking about the restaurant business, which was the students' favorite session, actually. They loved that session, not least because they got to pitch their own food concepts to someone who does that for a living. We had a case on Beyonce, which was really interesting, how Beyonce launches her albums. We did something with UNICEF on charity content. We had the chief executive of the Financial Times, really, really interesting, telling us how he'd done their digital transformation. A great guest. And so it went on. We had a guy who runs Liberty Global, which is a big cable company. So we do get really, really great guests in. And I think that, you know, it's just one example of many electives that we do. But, you know, if you want industry engagement, which a couple of the questions are referring to, absolutely, that's our goal too. So not all not all UK, US, not all Harvard cases, you know, and as much industry engagement as we could possibly get.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the flavor in core and elective and co-curricular, which I'll come back to in a second, because I see from some of you some questions about that. But it's really important, like I said before, that we bring the industry to Oxford, and whether we're on Zoom or in person, people want to come and they want to spend time with you because you're very smart and interested and enthusiastic MBA students. And so it's never difficult for us to get relevant, experts from industry to come and talk to you. It's usually a challenge to kind of pare it back and figure out, what's going to be too many and kind of draw the line somewhere. And then to Alex's point as well, we're very much about two things actually when we think about case studies. Just talk about that for a second. One, I think our preference broadly is to do more what I tend to refer to as live case studies. So something that is happening now or happened recently. It's not, something that happened, somewhere between 2 and 20 years ago with a long document that you need to read in advance and pore over. There'll be some of that, but there are classics. But by and large, we want to talk about stuff that's going on now that we can relate to in sort of the current context, and will be relevant into the future as you embark back on your careers post MBA. And increasingly, we're very much focused on looking around the world for these stories. Because this is essentially what we're doing is bringing marketing to life through storytelling and having debates and discussions around those issues. And it's not just a US or Western Europe perspective that we have, and particularly given what the school has been emphasizing of late around more diversity and representation. This is a big push for us on the curriculum side for all courses, not just the marketing course. So I'm glad someone raised that, but it's very much at the heart of how we're thinking about certainly the course and the electives coming up. Just talk a bit about co-curricular, because I saw Lopa had a question about that. So basically, what do we offer that students would have available to them for building industry connections and expertise. If I'll just bring back my slides, just so you can see the list. Basically, there's quite a few things that we do. So the first one, actually, you'll get access to actually General Assembly's digital upskilling. So if you want to go even deeper on certain things, then you can do that. But importantly, and that's done with Careers. That's sort of a service that they offer. I didn't put on the slide, but they also offer all sorts of marketing and marketing related extras. So if you're into analytics, then you might want to take a coding workshop, so to learn how to code Python, for example. You might be interested in new product development, which is something that comes up in pretty much all of our courses, but they have some workshops around that, particularly for entrepreneurs. And Careers, I'm sure, has or will talk to you about the different co-curricular options that they have, but there are quite a lot that touch on marketing and that we liaise with Careers on. We have a Future Marketing Initiative Symposium. It's an annual event. It's always around sort of late November, early December. This year, I think early December, which is a conference, a day-long conference that MBA students are invited to, where all of our Future Marketing Initiative partners come and we talk about what's on the horizon for marketing and some big issues. And so the last one we had, which was the end of last year, we talked about everything from sustainability and recyclable and sustainable packaging through in consumer goods, through to ethics and responsibility in marketing, through to new digital platforms, through to AI. I mean, really, it sort of spans the set of things you could imagine that would be talked about. And the way we put that symposium together in terms of how do we set the agenda, we go out and ask the senior execs from our Future of Marketing Initiative companies, what do they think we should be talking about in our symposium? What's important for them in the next, not just 12 months, but 3 to 5 years. What are they thinking about now that's on the horizon that they want to have a discussion around and share some lessons around? Plus, we contribute our research. So that's something that is quite special and open to MBA students. We have a case competition. There's lots of case competitions around the school, but the marketing one is sponsored by L'Oreal. We do it in competition with a bunch of other European business schools. Happy to say every year that it's been running, I think we've done it now 3 years, and for the last 3 years, Oxford has won. It's not biased at all. Oxford is just clearly the best in this competition, so it's a matter of pride. And then I mentioned, and as Alex and Rhonda mentioned, we have tons and tons and tons of guest speakers that you can engage with, and it's not just the leaders of big, massive household name businesses. It's entrepreneurs. It's people from companies that are really important and have interesting insights that you've never heard of before. L'Oreal, for example, might be a household name, but most people have probably never heard of a B2B business like Teradata, which is pretty much the analytics and data warehousing backbone of every retailer, airline, and bank in the world. Right? So we bring those sorts of people in as well, because marketing obviously isn't just about the cool stuff that we see on, advertised on TV or YouTube and we see on the shop shelves. So we want to have that sort of breadth of experience as well. So hopefully, Lopa, that answers your question about co-curricular. And then also there's a student group, OBN, Oxford Business Network, on marketing. It's not called marketing. It's sort of media, and it's got a name that is marketing adjacent, shall we say? And then we get involved as faculty with that as the students desire. So really, it's up to you in some part to design the co-curricular experiences and bring your connections and experiences into the fold as well.
And the other thing to point out is, of course, that we're talking about Oxford University here. So that even in the unlikely event that you were to run out of co-curricular activities within marketing at the Saïd Business School, you would have the whole of the rest of the Saïd Business School, which is fantastic. And every time you walk through to the sort of atrium, which is where that picture is that Andrew's in, there's some fantastic event going on about electric cars or the history of chocolate or something. And then you can go out to Oxford itself, which is just as an absolutely unlimited amount. And as someone who went to INSEAD, where Andrew also used to teach, INSEAD's a great school, but it is just a business school, and it doesn't have around it a world-class university as well. Whereas at Oxford, if you're interested in the music of Bach or the literature of Henry, whatever, you can always satisfy that as well, or be in plays or perform or whatever it is. So to the original question on co-curricular, there is truly unlimited co-curricular activity at Oxford University within and indeed beyond the business school. There was a question from Han about digital marketing in China and Asia in general. And I think that the truth is that's integrated into the course, that, where we talk about digital marketing, we're seeking to bring to bear examples from right across the world, including Asia. And that would also be true of the electives in that field as well.
Yeah, and I mean, absolutely. I mean, this is also related to actually that Ishani's question right above Han's question in the chat around innovation. Frankly, if we take how people are using social media and how digital platforms are being used for everything, most of that innovation has come out of Asia and particularly China, and the big internet companies in China. And so that is obviously part of what we talk about, where we look at where these things are coming from and then how they sort of diffuse throughout other markets or regions in the world. And so sort of to Ishani's broader question about, how much focus does the school put on innovation as part of core marketing? It's in talking about innovative things in marketing, absolutely. So if we take, and I mean, Rhonda can speak to this perhaps, and if we think about the advertising and comms module in the course, it's split between sort of talking about the classics, if you will, which are still used, but then, what are the innovations? How are they used? How do you integrate all of this together into a cohesive media plan or a campaign? And then what else is coming, right? So if maybe you're not thinking about marketing on TikTok, if you're a conservative life insurance brand, but maybe you're thinking about what content on TikTok looks like that might have a format type appeal on other platforms. So we sort of can take it, there's a platform or a channel aspect, but there's also kind of what happens on that might go into other contexts, because again, it comes down to what the customer is interested in. But Rhonda, I mean, what's your perspective on that in terms of that sort of split between, you need to kind of know the older stuff, but then we want to really focus on the innovative stuff too?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've worked really hard to create that balance, knowing that we'll have students who have never taken any kind of marketing course before, and we're going to have students who have worked in marketing for 5 years. And so the idea is we do want to build some of the fundamentals, but it is very much a forward-looking course, trying to keep on top of evolving trends. And also, I can't overemphasize how important it is to consider the wealth of knowledge your classmates are also bringing. And part of the reason, we work so hard, and Admission works so hard to develop such a diverse class from all parts of the world and all different experiences, is so that you can learn from each other. And so not only in marketing, I know this applies to lots of courses, in addition to sharing our expertise and our research, we also create a platform where you guys can exchange ideas with each other. And I'll admit that, you know, I've learned so much from my students, and lots of my examples, which I try to make very representative, have come from former students who'd be like, oh, you know what, in Mauritius, actually, you know, so happened, or here's a great ad from Russia, or here's a great ad, right? That's another wealth of knowledge that, you know, again, can't overemphasize.
Just picking up on some more questions, I think there's quite a few about research. So let me kind of address that. I mean, either, you know, how do you get involved in FOAMing? How do you get involved in our research? You know, Lopa's even, you know, asking about maybe becoming a researcher, doing a DPhil, which I'm not going to go into pitching the DPhil program now, Lopa, but happy to talk offline about that. But just, you know, more broadly, I mean, I talked about how we bring our research into the classroom in terms of sharing, you know, the insights from our research. Let me give an example and talk about sort of participation. So actually an example we haven't done in the classroom yet, but it's totally relevant. So if you think about the advertising boycott of Facebook that has been unfolding over the last couple of weeks. Now, if you just set aside the moral justifications for advertisers doing that for a minute, and you think about the role of Facebook as a media channel, you know, an advertising channel, among everything else that you know, a brand might be spending money on for advertising. These are not independent activities. So, you know, what I'm doing on Facebook might help or hurt, for that matter, the effectiveness of my TV advertising or my magazine advertising or my Twitter advertising, my Google search advertising, and, you know, whatever it might be. This is a sort of a network of media channels. So we've been doing research with Kantar, which is a large insights and media measurement company, part owned by WPP, looking at about 800 different campaigns for advertisers around the world, where we have the information on the media plans, we have the impact on brand and various marketing KPIs. So we can look at sort of how different campaign characteristics and media compositions, so Facebook at this level and TV at that level and so on and so forth, combine to drive performance. So what we did in sort of the wake of the Facebook boycott is ask ourselves, well, what happens if you set Facebook to 0 in those plans? How does it impact the effectiveness of what's left over? Even if Facebook might not be a massive part of say, a particular campaign's media plan. And it turns out, by and large, most of the time, it's actually going to lower the effectiveness of whatever is left over. So, you know, it's just an example of how you, and it's a very much a machine learning driven analysis. It's very quantitative, very stats driven, but it's an example of where our research is able to address something that's really happening now. It's relevant to the marketing industry for sure, but it's also relevant if you think about students, because it helps us show the point, hey, when you're thinking about a media plan, think about how these different components work together as a system, as opposed to just separate components that you might even have different teams working on and never talking to each other. Because if you pull one out, maybe for good reasons from an ethics and responsibility standpoint, there might be a commercial impact to that. So just as an example, if we can bring that research into the classroom. In terms of participating in research, sometimes we do run studies or experiments and involve MBA students in those. And also sometimes we involve MBA students as research assistants on projects. It just sort of really depends on what your background is and interest levels are. So it's the sort of thing that once you're here, we can talk about. And if there's a group that are interested, then we'll put together a session, have a chat about what might be possible. So it's sort of an ad hoc thing, but we're always, as a faculty, open to getting our students, MBA students, involved in the research enterprise, because I think it's a good opportunity for everyone. So that's the point about the research, but I think hit quite a few questions. I know we're almost out of time, and I'm pretty sure Alex has to drop off, or might have needed to drop off a few minutes ago. So Alex, I apologize for stretching.
I'll say one final thing.
Go for it.
The sort of elephant in the room is like, should I do this course now or should I delay a year? You know, if anyone's thinking that, you know, listen, it's just my personal opinion, but if I were you, I would go for it. So I think this is a good time to do it. And I think that the hybrid sort of online in-person model is actually kind of the model that universities will be at anyway throughout the 2020s. And I think all that's happened is that we've moved forward. And so I remember thinking about going to do a master's degree and wondering whether to delay, and I'm glad I didn't. And I think that my one final closing piece of advice would be just go for it, actually. Yeah. But thank you so much. I look forward to seeing everyone. I hope you asked some great questions when you're actually here, because they're excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. And there's a couple more questions, Rhonda. If you can stick around for a minute or two more, then we'll try and end on time. I thought there's a question here that maybe, Rhonda, you want to take. It's from Han about balancing sustainability and marketing. Maybe, Rhonda, if you've got some views on that, I've got some thoughts too, but you want to go first?
Sure, yeah, no, I mean, I think we talk a lot in core and in electives about how important it is to lead with purpose, not just in marketing, actually outside of marketing, we talk about the importance of purpose and having values as a company, as a brand. Not only is that just the right thing to do, but you have consumers who care about causes and care about things like sustainability, and you have to reflect what your consumers want. So there's, if you want to think about it, kind of a profit-oriented motivation to do that as well. And so we talk about some of those themes in marketing and a lot outside of marketing as well. And as I mentioned before, we don't only think about examples and assignments that have to do with for-profit firms. So just as an example, in my elective, the Strategic Consumer Insights elective in past years, we worked with an organization called Wild Crew, which is an animal conservation unit in the university, about things like how can we inspire sort of empathy and sympathy for non-charismatic animals. So, there are certain animals that have a lot of charisma, things like tigers, elephants, I think are at the top of the charts, and others like bats, for example, that people have some misconceptions about, and there are certain governments that are kind of, try to support the culling of populations that can completely destroy certain ecosystems. So how do you change people's attitudes about something like that? So we think about sustainability, we can think about it in its own right and sort of marketing towards sustainable causes, but also how that plays a role in the backdrop of an organization, even if sustainability isn't their utmost goal.
Yeah, and I just add that, the importance of sustainability, it's not, what you want to avoid is obviously greenwashing or call it what you want. But, so again, back to our research, we've been working on a project lately where we look at, we've got 15 years worth of brand equity or brand valuation data from one of the major bodies that does brand equity valuation. So you can, put the value of your brand on the balance sheet, for example, as an intangible asset. So we've looked at that, and what's interesting is a consumer-based brand equity measure, and it's got all these different dimensions underneath it. And one of them is sort of social responsibility, another is environmental responsibility, another is governance, so sort of the ESG type things and responsible business dimensions. And so they're measured. And what we've seen in terms of kind of what we look at is, well, what's kind of driving brand value? What are kind of the strongest pillars or underpinnings of a brand being a $1 billion brand or whatever. Very kind of steadily in the last 3 to 4 years, that sort of ESG, particularly responsibility index underneath the brand value measure has been increasing dramatically in importance in terms of its contribution to brand value across industries, across sectors, across parts of the world. This global data. So much so that it sort of started out as basically nothing. Then it was sort of, on the radar. Then in the last 2 years that we've looked at this, it's basically doubled in importance each year from year to year. So it's sort of rising exponentially, if you will, but that tells us regular consumers care about this as much as people for whom it might be a particular interest. And so if we take that, marketing's about growth and it's about demand, there's two points there. One is, the way that people value brands and representative samples of populations around the world value brands, increasingly the sustainable and responsible business elements are super important in sort of the judgments people make about brands, which influence how much they're willing to pay, influence buying behavior, and so on. And then the second one, quite frankly, and this is not meant to sound cute, but if we don't do something that's responsible and helps the environment, for example, we look at climate change, which has been a big theme in the school the past year, then there's it's going to, you know, demand is not going to be there for much longer into the future, quite frankly. So businesses need customers, and businesses need a healthy planet in which to do business. And businesses can contribute to that as well, and a healthy planet from an environmental standpoint as well as a social standpoint. So it's at the core of what we do throughout the entire curriculum in the school, and that includes marketing. And we'll certainly get into interesting ethics debates too. You know, there's no doubt about that. There's always someone sitting in the back corner who raises their hand in the first class. Rhonda knows this joke. Who puts their hand up at some point and says, "Yeah, but isn't marketing evil? What do you think about that?" And that's always quite the interesting way to kick off the course. But you know, that's fine. People will think that, and our job is to help you have a more informed business position on that. That, you know, that's relevant to whatever it is you want to do. I know we're now out of time, so I don't want to keep people. So I want to thank Misha for organizing the webinar, and Rhonda for being on it with me, and of course Alex as well. But I want to thank all of you for joining. You know, at peak we had, you know, 70, 80 odd folks on, and I hope this has been useful and informative. And of course, if you've got more questions, just feed them to the MBA team. And we look forward to seeing you in not many months from now. So all the best with what you're doing between now and then. And yeah, we'll see you in Oxford for the MBA. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us as well. And as Andrew mentioned, if anyone has any questions, feel free to send them in. And we hope everyone's getting excited that it's almost August. Bye for now.